Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 34 of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the beautiful, sunny, and warm confines of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Wherever you may be listening or watching, I thank you as always. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel. And hopping into episode 34, we're going to touch on the Eagles' organized team activities, news, and notes. This was from the end of phase 2, which happened at the end of last week. Just wanted to kind of touch bases and go into the notes and more or less touch on some of the things that I felt need to be addressed or definitely need to be talked about from the press conferences and practice notes. I just want to give you guys a heads up too. You're going to see the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast on Apple Podcasts within the next, at least by the end of this week, no later than the beginning of next week, you'll be seeing that on there. We also now have a Substack channel. You'll be seeing us with Substack as well. Now that primarily for my fellow Bird Gang, my fellow Eagles fans, that channel on Substack will be primarily just for the Eagles. That channel will be talking about, you'll see episodes from Blunt Talk Sports Podcast, but primarily Eagles related episodes. And you'll also see articles that I have writing about the team, things, news and notes that I think are of interest and need to be addressed. And, just expanding the show, expanding our horizons, and more or less just, through the help of you guys and through you guys liking, sharing, and subscribing, it's been a tremendous help. It's been a huge gift. And I thank you guys for just, tagging along in this experience with me and allowing me to continue to provide this content to you. I thank you so much. But with all that being said, we're going to hop right into it. Fly Eagles Fly. We're going to hop into the practice and press conference notes. Now, I took the press conference notes first because the press conference notes were very detailed and full. They talked to a lot of the young guys at the end of last week, and I wanted to hop right in with Jordan Davis, who will probably be one of the most integral players for the team this year, who's going to have a key role in what can be done and what he could do as far as helping the team. That being said, I want to just give you guys a little bit of clarity, a background of what happened within the press conference. One of the big things that Jordan Davis said he worked on, he spoke about working on, was his conditioning. He said that his conditioning was not up to par or where it needed to be, which I agree. I mean, we all kind of remember the highlight of him chasing Josh Allen in that Bills game at the end of October, where you see him making that big loop around. Everybody's like, oh my God, the speed and tenacity. You see that big man chasing him. Yeah, but had he been probably a couple pounds lighter, would have caught him and dragged his ass back for probably a 3-yard gain. He wouldn't even been in position, even in scoring range, or be in a position to make that play. That being said, there's little things like that that can cost you games, and I'm glad to see Jordan Davis is addressing that. He's talked about staying in shape, obviously, which is a part of his conditioning. Quote, I am not comfortable where I am. I'm always focused on getting better, which is great to hear. He said his main thing was his diet, cutting out the juice and shit, staying active, and even on his days off, whether it was hiking, taking a walk, lifting weights, watching film, before he watches TV, anything like that, just making sure that you're applying yourself every day, that you're doing the little things, because that's what's going to go into making you a better player. And it's a big year for him. This is year 3. This is year 3. He's got to really step up. There's a lot of criticism that he gets because though he's been solid for them, people feel like Aleem McNeil was a better selection, defensive tackle for Detroit. And I like Aleem McNeil a lot, but I also like Jordan Davis too. And I do feel like Jordan Davis, if his conditioning is better, he'll be in that conversation without a doubt. So it's great to see him say that and to see that he's addressing that. Says he'll be able to handle more snaps per game due to his conditioning, which is going to be needed because he's going to need to be an anchor, especially them going into a 3-4 defense. I have an episode going into that, my NFL deep dive series. I have an episode later on coming in speaking about the defensive adjustments and what Vic Fangio's implementing. But yes, Jordan Davis is going to have a key role on the defense, so him staying in great condition and being in shape is going to be pivotal. He also commented on Vic Fangio. He stated, Vic Fangio is no BS. With him, it's straight ball. Perfect. I don't think it can be said any better. Also spoke on Coach Clint Hurt working and stressing fundamentals with the defensive line, especially because working at 3-4, if you don't stay to your fundamentals, you don't stay to your gaps, that pretty much makes the defense ineffective, causes huge running lanes. Remains to be seen. But again, great that they're being receptive to the coaching. The guys are, taking heed to what needs to be done to make them better and understanding the task at hand. There's no Fletcher Cox coming to save them. There's nobody that's going to help them. So, huge. He was told by Coach Fangio to be the anchor of the D-line, which, again, we all expected. He spoke on the loss of Fletcher Cox as well. He stated, God knows we love him, but at the end of the day, we have to put our best foot forward. Ain't no help coming, which is one of my favorite lines. So what are you going to do? And he basically, stating what has already been known and it's a fact. Fletcher Cox is retired. He's not coming back. And you guys are high. You and Jalen Carter are high draft picks. It's going to be a lot out of you guys to step up, and I think they will. I don't want to make it seem like I'm bashing him, but it must be stated. His conditioning was shit. And his conditioning had been better. We probably would have won a couple of those games we didn't need to lose, or probably would have had some stops and some key downs. It's just little things, guys. I mean, I contrary to belief how I look now, there was a time when I was younger. I was a shorter, chubbier kid. I played offensive line. So I know a D lineman is vicious and nasty. And if a D lineman got speed and got athleticism, he's going to tear your ass up. And at the end of the day, if he's not in shape, you'll bully him and dog walk him all day because he ain't going to be able to do anything. So it's great that he's addressing this and he sees this. And then more importantly, he's taking atonement for it, because I think that's something that didn't happen a lot at the end of last year. Guys weren't really taking atonement for, the collapse and their play. And it's just huge because now they're in a leadership role. So it's great to see. Leading next into my favorite player so far this offseason, Isiah Rodgers. He spoke at length about being away from the team, being away from the game, and spoke on his suspension and what it showed him. He spoke in depth, but I want to make sure I read this quote and get this quote to you directly. He said that being away from the game, it brought me closer to my loved ones. It brought me closer to the game. It made me actually not take this game for granted and just understand that the league doesn't need anybody. Well said there, Isiah Rodgers. He said he worked on his speed while he was going. And keep in mind, guys, he was going for over 512, I believe a little over 512 days. I mean, it's been a while since he had played a snap. It's been at least 2 years. It's been a while. Nonetheless, so he said he worked on his speed. He hadn't changed his regimen at all. Stayed diligent to his regimen due that he knew he was going to be playing this year. It was a great chance that his suspension was going to be lifted, which it was recently. So great job there. He spoke on his versatility, what he brings to the table, said he plays inside and outside cornerback, which we know this from seeing him in Indianapolis. I think he's going to be a great addition to the team, preferably if he has to play outside or nickel. It doesn't really matter. I actually found this interesting to know. I didn't know this. I found this out during the press conference. He's actually related to Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. Hopefully he doesn't play like Rodgers-Cromartie did when he was in Philadelphia, because he fucking sucked in Philly. But yeah, interesting. So he has that NFL makeup and DNA to him, so that's good to see. And he said one interesting tidbit that I wanted to touch on. He said that he was excited about the new kickoff rule. We all know he did a little kickoff for return duties in Indianapolis. He spoke about how excited he is for that, and the chances for him to potentially be a returner in that, and be able to put points on the board. Special teams is going to be a key element now. Special teams is back. For a football purist like myself, who kind of felt like the touchback rule and the kickoff rules were kind of taking the teeth out of special teams, where, not every fucking guy's going to be Pat Mahomes or A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase or Derrick Henry. Some guys, they're just going to be good on punt returns. Some guys are going to be good on special teams, but you need those guys because that unit dictates field position. I cannot stress that anymore. That unit dictates field position. It dictates where your offense starts and where your defense starts. And no matter where you are, if your special teams is shit, your team will be shit because of it. So, great to hear that. Going further, Nolan Smith, great to hear from him. He spoke on the expectations set by himself. He spoke on wanting 10-plus sacks and understanding that the NFL is a learning curve, so he's trying to temper his expectations, which, I expected him to say. I mean, Nolan Smith, he's had great press conferences since he's been here. I kind of blame. I don't really want to knock him too much because I think it was health and part of coaching why he didn't really see the field a lot early last year. Needless to say, though, I hope that the press conferences matches the play because he seems like a fucking dog and he just seems like somebody you could easily root for. He stated now that his shoulder is fine, which is great to hear. No setbacks with that. He's fully cleared. He definitely needs to play more, though. I mean, what's interesting, he had 188 defensive snaps last year in total. I checked this out on NFL.com. And he had 96 rushes against the passer, which is pretty decent for 188 defensive snaps. That's not bad at all for a guy who didn't play that much. It highlights it from the season. He had a sack against the Dolphins, and he had 9 quarterback pressures, which was impressive. And he also received credit for a half a sack in the playoff loss against Tampa for the postseason last year. So showing some promise. I think he just needed to be healthy and just, get the game down packed, and once he got the game down, he was going to be fine. So I think that's great. One keynote that I thought was very interesting. He said he learned footwork, like how to properly place your feet as a D lineman from Lane Johnson. Said that Lane Johnson helps him a lot with that on his footwork, and he said that he has also worked on foot spacing, has been wearing toe spacers to make sure that, he's aligned properly, knee alignment, things like that. So great to hear that. On the defensive side, he's getting coaching from one of the last remnants of the OGs, BJ, Brandon Graham. Spoke about how Brandon Graham was telling him, it may take time, stress emphasis to him to, prayer and patience, not, don't try to rush the process. Look at what happened with him. Things didn't develop right away, but he took his time and it developed. So, he has good teachers around him, great tutelage. It seems like Nolan Smith is willing and able. And it's going to be a huge year for him, because if he is what we think he can be, this defense is going to be fucking fierce. So, and last two notes about Nolan Smith in his press conference. He said he added more muscle this year. He said he was 238 last year, and I think that was kind of because of a shoulder injury. And in college, you don't need to be as big, just more fast. And now he's 245, so he's a little bit more solid. And he stated that as far as the depth chart is listed, he'll be third in the pass rush rotation, which I think is great. I think it shows that he's made a great leap in the offseason, shows that he's definitely showed promise. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of expectations for Nolan Smith. So let's hope that he definitely delivers, because if he does, it makes us, essentially forget that Hassan Reddick is gone. That being said, this one is one that I think everybody wanted to touch on, because this is kind of like a little heartfelt for everybody. John Ross, former first-round pick of the Cincinnati Bengals in 2017 draft. The draft that was held in Philly, I know, because me and my best friend went to that draft. The draft experience was a great time, one of the best experiences of my life. If anybody, I recommend to anybody, if you can go to a draft experience, if you have an opportunity to go, please do it. Take your friends, take loved ones, the people that you really give a fuck about, go do it. It'll be everything for you to do, from the football aficionado to the average casual. It was a great experience. However, that being said, John Ross spoke to the media, and he spoke about his decision to retire, calling it, quote, a mistake, which I agree. He seemed like he was just going through a rough time. He said he spoke on struggling mentally and physically with some of the injuries that he had. Now he is in a better space mentally, physically, and spiritually, which is fantastic to hear. I think a lot of young guys, when they come into the league, especially, I remember Chris Carter, it was Chris Carter. He quoted this one time I was watching on a show. He said, the hardest position to learn outside of quarterback coming into the league is wide receiver. And that it usually takes a year or two for a wide receiver to really get adjusted from the college game to the pro game. And John Ross, he never really developed because his game was predicated on speed. I don't really think that route running was really a real thing that he really predicated himself on. And then dealing with injuries and dealing with different styles of play, it affects you. And it affected him. And it was just interesting to see how he's been appreciative and understanding and receptive of the process. And he's just plugged away, and it's got him back into this point. He tried out, as I've reported to you guys, he tried out during the rookie mini camps, and that's what helped him get the job. So I think that was great. He said something that was very interesting. And I want to get into this quote. They asked him, what was his mindset when he was coming here for the tryout? And he said, and I quote, "When I got on that plane, I basically told myself, don't come home. And that was my focus going through tryouts, and it's still my focus now." If, I give this guy credit, because it's a lot to be at that height where you're a number one pick, and then you go from being a number one pick to being an afterthought, a guy that doesn't even get burned, his turn in the sun, his chance to run. It's deep. It's deep. It just goes to show you more and more where having the right people around you, being in the right environment, having the right coaching, having the right type of people to help you, get through those mental depths and valleys that you go through emotionally, it's key. It's huge. He said he's feeling more and more comfortable within the offense and the team. He said he wants to prove that he hasn't lost a step. He said that he wants to prove now that he can utilize his speed with his route running, which, again, it's a long shot, but we'll see. He's made it this far. Feels he could reliably and consistently use his speed within his route running. I mean, again, John Ross is going to be a long shot to make the roster, but let's be honest. if he just plays decent and he does just enough what we expect him to do, which again, I mean, his best season he had, I believe, like 600 receiving yards. No, it was 6. Quote me on that. I want to say it was about 5 or 600 yards receiving. I want to say it's like late 500s. But more or less, you know, if he can do that and get you about 3 to 5 touchdowns and about 30 to 40 catches, that's a win. That's a win. So good to see that he's in a good mental place. Good to see that he's realigning focus. Good to see that, you know, his son has helped motivate him. But yeah, he's definitely got the odds, but it's going to be easy to root for this guy. And I'm just glad to see that he hasn't given up, and it's glad to see that he's just staying focused and poised. Next was Paris Campbell. He spoke on signing with the Eagles, and he said it was due to familiarity with Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni was the Colts offensive coordinator when Paris Campbell was drafted. He said he wants to be around greatness, spoke about playing around A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, said that, you know, he's been taking a lot of receptiveness and coaching, taking heed to some of the receptiveness and coaching from A.J. Brown throughout the offseason, which I think is great. He said Jalen Hurts, interestingly enough, was the first person that could reach out to him, spoke on Hurts' leadership and always working to get better, which you hear that from everybody. So again, that was fantastic news. You also kind of heard him and Hurts were building a rapport throughout OTA, so that's interesting to see too. He stated that he came to Philly on a top 30 visit 6 years ago when he was entering the draft, and thought Philly might draft him, but, you know, it didn't work out. But nonetheless, he's happy to be here now and have an opportunity to, you know, do what he thought he could have did 6 years ago. They talked a little bit more about the defensive formation. Like I said, I don't want to bog you down too much about that because I got a whole episode dedicated to that and how that defense works and the players we have and how they plan to implement that going throughout the season. But the Eagles also announced ESPN's Aaron Schatz spoke with some of the Eagles coaches, especially Vic Fangio. They commented that the defense will be converting to a 3-4 this year. It'll be less rotation, and they'll also be running a lot of 2-4-5 nickel. So again, for you people who don't really know too much about defensive formations, there will be an episode called Eagles NFL Deep Dive, 3-4 defense, 2-4-5 nickel, new Eagles defense. Like I said, that'll be coming out shortly. You'll be seeing that episode, so stay tuned for that. And then last but not least, the practice notes from this practice. Kaylee Ringo showed good downfield coverage. Showed that last year, so it's good to see that he's worked and gotten better in that regard. I think that it was interesting. Devin White, second straight week, flashed in pass coverage. The guy that's fighting for a check, fighting for his NFL career, fighting for his NFL life. Great to see he's doing good in practice. Let's hope that, you know, resonates to the games. Punt return reps, something you guys have heard me speak about at length. The team had Britton Covey, Cooper DeJean, Isiah Rodgers, and Anaya Smith returning punts, trying it out there. Because, again, it's going to be an element of the team that's going to be definitely a scoring threat. If it wasn't before, definitely is an element that's going to be back in this team that's going to be a focal point. I thought it was also, too, it was interesting, Jalix Hunt, third-round pick out of Houston Christian, has looked comfortable in coverage. Looks comfortable in pass coverage. They even, Vic Fangio getting wicked with the defense. You know, and we got to remember, Jalix Hunt, even though he's defensive end, outside edge rusher, this guy played at Cornell. If you remember doing the deep dive during the draft, this guy played some safety and corner. So it was very interesting to see him in one of those plays in practice. He was lined up in the slot against a wide receiver. So very interesting to see there. Sean Stevens, you've heard me mention that name before, undrafted free agent, cousin of Joey Porter Jr., flashed again this week with another pick. Just consistently put things on tape, consistently working to get better, consistently showing he's a ball hawk. If he keeps showing that, he's going to make the team. Honest God truth. And last but not least, what I thought was very interesting, that I think is going to help the guys tremendously this year in practice, especially. The Eagles had a new big screen monitor on wheels posted on the side of the field, where basically it shows live feeds of practice and instant replays of reps, which I think is great because it allows the coaches to show exactly what they want the guys to do in practice, how they want it replicated, and leaves no mistakes and no errors. The tape doesn't lie, so everything will be there. And it just shows that the Eagles are leaving no stone unturned this year. They're really doing everything they can to make sure that they rebound from that horrific collapse that they had a year ago at the end of the season, and that they're one of the perennial contenders. And I think with what they're doing, it'll show and it'll resonate. But as always, you know, games got to get played. But Nonetheless, guys, I'll be wrapping up episode 34. And as always, I thank you guys for watching and listening. As again, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Take care and have a great day, guys.